Your AI builder is secretly choosing the wrong framework. You ask for a fast, beautiful, cross-platform app, and it defaults to React Native. But there's another framework that's quietly dominated for years. It's more loved by developers, crushes performance benchmarks, and delivers animations so smooth they make React Native look like a flipbook. That framework is Flutter.
In this video, I'm going to rank the top Flutter vibe coding platforms and leave you with my 5 non-negotiables about any vibe coding platform that you can reuse anywhere. Let's build.
Let's build. Let's build. Let's build. Let's build.
Think of your app like a house. Paint is easy to change. The slab isn't. AI app builders hand you all the paint options, but pour the slab without even asking. That slab is the framework, the code base it quietly chose for you. I'll show you why that foundation is probably the most important decision of any AI built project. Then I'll put the framework I know best, which is Flutter, to the test.
We're going to rate each platform based on how well it responds to this deceptively simple prompt. Create a Flutter-based mobile app that can read and write to NFC tags. The reason this prompt is deceptively simple comes down to a few core realities that might not be immediately obvious to the vibe coder. Firstly, it will require the correct use of a pub.dev package. Secondly, NFC is very platform specific. On iOS, you can't just have the phone passively listen for tags. The user must explicitly initiate a scan. Plus, core NFC on iOS primarily focuses on NDEF tag types. Thirdly, you simply can't test NFC on an iOS simulator or Android emulator. All development and testing require a physical device and physical tags. How well is each platform equipped to enable me to test in this way? Flutter lets developers build for iOS, Android, web, and desktop from a single code base. Because its Dart programming language compiles directly to native code, it achieves high performance without sacrificing efficiency. However, major AI-assisted platforms tend to default to JavaScript-based stacks like React Native. This choice is less about suitability for AI workflows and more about widespread adoption and tight integration with the tools these platforms were built on, such as JavaScript. Flutter, by contrast, is sometimes overlooked, yet it's one of the most structurally consistent frameworks out there. In Flutter, every element is a widget, every layout is explicit, every component nests predictably. That's gold for AI. Now, this isn't a React Native versus Flutter video. That can be for another time because there are genuine pros and cons to both. I'm more interested in shining a light on Flutter as a vibe coding language and highlighting some of the platforms moving the Flutter development space forward in this new vibe coding era. Let's set up some ground rules about the platforms we're comparing today. Firstly, we're looking at vibe coding platforms that produce Flutter code only. Specifically the platforms that present users with a "what do you want to build" style input box, and build a Flutter app from there. This means that your more traditional IDEs, such as Cursor or VS Code, and by extension VS Code Copilot, aren't included here, nor are CLI or extension-based tools like Claude Code and Gemini CLI. Naturally, I'm also excluding any vibe coding platform that doesn't build an app built with Flutter. So Bolt, Lovable, AppyPie, Base44, etc. If they don't code in Flutter, we're not looking at them here. Naturally, they must fully fulfill the brief. That is, to build a mobile app that can read and write to NFC tags. No placeholder UI, no partly implemented functionality, and because NFC can only be tested on an actual physical device, the platform must be able to deploy to my Android test device here. This can be anything from downloading and running the code manually, right up to App Store deployment, but I want to test the actual read and write of these blank NFC tags I have right here. It's time to put them to the test. The top Flutter-based vibe coding platforms. ranks from the one that keeps you most abstracted from the code to the one that demands you dive deep into the framework. Starting with Noah. Launched in 2023, it burst onto the scene as a low-code app builder, but quickly adopted a hybrid approach, integrating AI into the platform. Noah sits at the edge of what could be called a vibe coding platform. Its low-code heritage is still very evident, even as the team is clearly invested in integrating an agent AI into their experience. The results from this AI agent are mixed. Initial prompts can yield promising output, but things tend to unravel quickly. Once the first task is complete, the model struggles to maintain context, making it increasingly difficult to keep track of ongoing requirements and losing the thread on more nuanced instructions. Notably, the AI appears to lack a distinct planning phase, as many modern AI agents seem to have, meaning it jumps directly into execution instead of orchestrating or reasoning through what needs to be done, often missing certain requests and finer points as a result. Noah's AI made no effort to manage dependencies, which meant that our NFC app was a bit of a non-starter. After a lot of back and forth, I tried exporting the project to VS Code to salvage the effort. It did eventually compile, but the main screen never rendered correctly. After a few more attempts and a lot of burned message credits, it was clear I wasn't getting my NFC app out of Noah. I really tried with Noah. I really wanted to like this platform, but all it would ever output for me was error-ridden UI. In theory, it should be the perfect middle ground between code and creation, the hybrid of low-code toolkit, AI copilot, and visual builder, but it never quite nails any of them. It's not as robust as a real IDE for serious development, yet it's not as playful or intuitive as pure visual tools. Maybe future updates will improve the AI's understanding of dependencies and backend, but for now, it feels more like a proof of concept than a true production-ready Flutter development tool, for vibe coding or otherwise. Next is Replit. While its roots go all the way back to 2012, its AI-powered Flutter code generation is a recent evolution. Its unique angle is providing a full cloud-based suite of tools that feels like a pair programmer with AI.
Replit doesn't box you into a single approach, but by default it tends to nudge you towards React Native. So for Flutter and Dart, being the programming language, we want to select Dart. After that, you're greeted with the familiar "what do you want to build" screen. And what's impressive is that Replit immediately shifts into planning mode. It puts together a feature list for the project, checks out previous apps that may have used NFC capabilities and other inspiration, and goes off to pull relevant package dependencies from pub.dev. It makes sure your plans are realistic and set up for success from the outset. I've also had Replit come back and say, we don't think this particular framework that you want to build in is right for your project, and we'll suggest another one. It then breaks everything down into a task list, so the agent is always working on small, manageable chunks. This keeps it focused and on track and helps manage any context window issues. So while the agent builds, let's have a poke around the rest of Replit's platform. It's a full-featured environment, including everything from consoles to publishing, database, and connectors. Replit is in many ways the heavyweight in today's lineup. And while it might not have the visual flair of some of the vibe coding platforms, don't let that fool you. It comes from no-nonsense pre-low-code roots, but it's always kept an eye on the future, embracing AI assistance earlier and more thoroughly than many of its low-code peers. Their agent, now at version 3, is not just bolted on, it's absolutely woven into the fabric of the platform. So even as Replit's capabilities expand into a huge set of tools, the agent's integration remains pretty seamless. During testing, if you hit a roadblock, let's say on the database tab, the agent knew exactly where it was, referenced the actual errors showing, and made changes without missing a beat. That level of platform awareness is pretty rare, as most AI agents in other vibe coding tools don't see the workspace or can't actually apply fixes without a lot of extra prompting. Not in this case though, Agent is a true co-pilot. Replit built my NFC app in short order. It published it to the web without fuss, but of course you can't use the NFC package on the web. So here's the catch. There isn't direct internal publishing to mobile. You'll have to push your code to GitHub, then use VS Code or your tool of choice to manually build and package for iOS and Android. No direct-to-store deployment tools like you'll find in some other platforms. So when it comes time to get that APK or IPA up on the Play Store or App Store, you're on your own for the final leg. The TLDR is that Replit might be light on drag and drop glitz, but when it comes to depth, AI autonomy, platform integration, code manipulation, and reliable task management, it's a tough one to beat. As a development tool, it's robust, surprisingly fun for building and iterating on, and a solid fit for anyone who doesn't mind handling packaging and deployment outside of the Replit platform.
As for our NFC app, I was able to open it up in VS Code, and after 2 minor build errors, one of which was my own and one of which was Replit's, I simply fed those back into Agent like a good old vibe coder and redeployed the fix to GitHub. I was able to get a fully working NFC app that both scanned and wrote to my NFC tags beautifully. Moving on to Codelessly. This platform emerged around 2021, pioneering a cloud-based UI editor for Flutter. Its core difference is generating clean, scalable Flutter code from visual components, acting as a bridge between designers and developers.
Codelessly, much like Noah, jumps straight into writing code. No time for planning here. You're presented with an IDE-style window, and you can see all your code being created in real time. Once Codelessly has created enough, it will switch to a preview view. However, with our NFC app, I was instead hit with 36 errors. In true vibe coding fashion, I hit that attempt fix button, which just delivered another 3 errors, so that's 39 in total. Here we can see it going back multiple times to get information about the NFC Manager pub.dev package, which it struggles to implement. Also, its AI looks to have either a knowledge cutoff or limited web use, as it was bringing back some strange information about the versions of this pub.dev package. On the 3rd attempt, we're down to 20 errors, which it hung on, so I then had to regenerate a response. I paid for the tokens each time. Eventually, the AI agent settled on coding a limited version without any NFC write capabilities, and still 4 errors. I guess to Codelessly's credit, perhaps it was looking to implement NFC support for a wider range of NFC tags, which should have worked on Android, but it's not picked up on the iOS limitation around its support for NDEF tags only. Eventually we get a preview, and so I go off looking for ways to deploy to mobile. The only options are Netlify, great for the web, Vercel, also great for the web, and GitHub. So there's no inbuilt deployment options for the App Store or Play Store here. So after deploying to GitHub and opening in VS Code, I get an error saying the code uses an outdated Android embedding version. So again, in true vibe coding fashion, we'll head to ChatGPT and see if we can find a quick fix. And I'm able to get the app loaded. However, using the app is a different story. I'm not able to get the NFC read function to work at all. And the write function is grayed out. As I just mentioned, Codelessly wasn't able to implement the write function.
Now Rocket, a newer entrant, it launched with a focus on seamless Figma to Flutter translation. Its entire premise is that design and code should be a continuous workflow, drastically cutting down UI implementation time. Since launch, Rocket has rapidly expanded the frameworks it supports. You can spin up a project in Flutter, HTML, Next.js, or React. An impressive lineup, though a few of the integrations are still marked as coming soon. Once you give it a text prompt, it drafts a proposed app structure and lets you define how many screens you want it to build.
It's not quite a full planning phase, but it gives the AI a clearer blueprint than tools like Noah or Codelessly. This is also the only real point where you can adjust how many tokens Rocket will use during the build, though you don't get a clear estimate of what the final usage or cost might be. Still, that's more transparency than most vibe coding platforms currently offer, so I guess it's something. Once you hit build, Rocket takes around 10 to 20 minutes to generate your app. That's pretty standard for AI-assisted builders. While it's building, let's explore the editor view. And honestly, it's pretty sleek. Navigation between screens is clean and intuitive, something that can't be said of most Flutter-based vibe coding platforms. You can switch to a widget selection mode for direct visual edits to the generated code, which sounds great in theory, but in practice, the preview jumps between a web and Flutter-based view, making editing slow and frustrating. It's not something I think most users will rely on, at least not in this current form. As for our NFC app, Rocket went heavy on UI but light on functionality. It created a beautiful layout and claimed full read-write functionality, but everything turned out to be just mock UI. The generated code lacked any meaningful NFC package implementation, which is a real shame. Rocket will also build an APK for Android testing, which is great, but iOS builds, presumably through TestFlight, are still listed as coming soon. So in short, Rocket got close to orbit, but for now, it burned up on re-entry.
Next is Dreamflow, from the team behind Flutterflow. Rather than simply Flutterflow with AI, it's a fundamental reimagining of the development process, built from the ground up for a generative-first workflow.
Dreamflow acknowledges one of Flutterflow's biggest limitations in that you could always see the code, you just couldn't edit it. Dreamflow solves that, but also introduces a couple of new problems in the process. The big point of difference here is omnisurface editing, which on one hand is pure marketing, but on the other does actually describe what Dreamflow hopes to achieve here, in that you should be able to edit a button on the visual canvas, then switch to the code editor and see the exact code for that button appear instantly. You can edit that code and add custom logic to it by hand, then you can use the AI prompt and say, make that button blue, and when clicked, show a success message. It's an ambitious vision, and there isn't really anyone that has cracked this nut, and I would argue Dreamflow is included here. But they certainly come the closest. If it's not done well, the user ends up sitting around waiting for the UI to reload, sort of like what we saw with Rocket. Dreamflow are the only ones to come close to a non-eye-gougingly slow refresh of the UI while it syncs code to agent to visuals. As far as our NFC app, Dreamflow took this in its stride. It developed a comprehensive plan from the outset, including sourcing relevant pub.dev packages, though it didn't account for a Flutter SDK version conflict with these dependencies, as we'll see later. Once Dreamflow finishes the first build, we can use it live in the interface or use the deployment tools to push directly to iOS, Android, and the web. They're the only platform I've seen with these deployment tools so tightly integrated. If you're familiar with deploying to mobile from Flutterflow, then this is probably the one part of the app that will feel pretty familiar, right down to the annoying quirk where your Play Store deployment has to fail for the first time and you have to upload it manually for some unknown reason. But once I had everything set up on the Play Store side of things, which I'll fast forward through because it is genuinely tedious and unavoidable, whichever way you deploy to the Play Store, the deployment went pretty smoothly. Dreamflow clearly uses the same deployment via CodeMagic integration that makes deploying to the App Store so easy from Flutterflow. There was a small bug in my first build which
Agent fixed up pretty quick, and then thankfully the second deployment was much, much quicker. While Dreamflow genuinely pushes Flutter as a platform forward, and there's no doubt you can create some exciting apps from your initial prompt, to actually use the platform in any real way, you will need to have some Flutter coding knowledge. This isn't Flutterflow. Yes, it frees you from the standard Flutterflow constraints around project structure, limited data types, and your general level of abstraction from the code. But the flip side of being closer to the code is that to get the most out of Dreamflow, you'll need a much bigger, broader knowledge of the Flutter framework. There is a definite learning curve here for the low coders coming from Flutterflow and elsewhere in the low-code community. But if you're an existing traditional Flutter developer looking to move into a more visual development or AI-assisted Flutter development environment, you'll feel right at home. And I have to say, pretty impressed with Dreamflow's output here. Finally, we have Firebase Studio, Google's full-stack AI workspace. Given its origins, you'd expect a seamless Flutter-first experience. However, this is where the platform feels counterintuitive. Despite explicitly prompting the AI to create a Flutter app, no less than 3 times, Firebase Studio consistently defaulted to a web stack using TypeScript, Next.js, and Tailwind CSS. The only workaround was to manually start a new Flutter workspace and then engage the integrated Gemini agent to build the application. Unfortunately, even after that, the AI struggled to correctly implement the necessary NFC package, leading to persistent build failures. It's a perplexing issue, especially since the platform has the tools, like the Flutter MCP server, that could have helped resolve these very dependencies, but it never attempted to use them. Ultimately, while Firebase Studio is still in preview and holds immense potential with its deep Firebase integration, it currently feels more like an AI-powered web development tool where Flutter is a secondary consideration. For dedicated, vibe-driven Flutter development, I don't think this one's quite ready for prime time. And that's a wrap. It's clear we're witnessing the exciting, foundational stages of AI-driven Flutter development, and the progress is already remarkable. With the blistering pace of innovation, expect these platforms to evolve significantly in the coming weeks and months. This rapid advancement is a testament to the vibrant AI and Flutter communities pushing these tools forward. If you enjoyed this overview, please like and subscribe for more. Which platforms are you most excited to try? Did you agree with my assessments? And what will you build first? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, happy building.